Hey guys, tonight we set sail on dark, creaking waters where cannon smoke still hangs in the wind, and the salty sting of the ocean sticks to your skin like a second layer. You're standing barefoot on the soaked deck of a splintered pirate sloop, wrists bound behind you, the damp rope chafing against your skin. The sails above hang limp like defeated flags, and the sky churns with low, angry clouds. Around you, the crew stares, not the loyal kind. They've already turned. Someone tipped off the authorities. You don't know who, you don't know when, but it's done. You've been captured. Your ankles feel heavier than your heart. Iron manacles bite into your skin, and the boards beneath your feet are slick with rain, blood, and the mud of 100 boot soles. The ship groans beneath you like it's ashamed. You glance toward the port. There's a fortified dock just ahead, and British Marines line the harbour like toy soldiers awaiting a parade. But this isn't a parade, isn't it? It's a slow, creaking funeral march, and you're the guest of honour. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Invite viewers to post their location and local time. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You know this isn't just a tale of adventure, it's a reckoning. And it's not just about pirates in general. It's about the ones history didn't bother to write enough about. The women. The ones who fought, stole and sailed alongside men, and sometimes better. But the stories of what happened to them after they were caught, that's where the salt stings deeper. Chains rattle at your wrists as the ship lurches to a halt. The British flag above the customs tower flaps lazily, mocking your fate. You can see a hangman's rope in the distance. It sways slightly in the breeze, waiting. But not everyone got the rope. Some got worse. Others vanished into silence. And a rare few, well, they slipped away into legend. History books like to shout about the grand naval victories and the heroic governors, but they barely whisper about the women who stood barefoot and bound on these same docks, blinking into the sunlight of their final day as pirates. You try to breathe, but it's thick air, heavy with salt and fear. The mainstream historical record is blunt. Captured pirates were usually hanged without much fanfare. But here's the twist. The record barely includes women. Just a handful. Anne Bonny, Mary Red, maybe a few others. But the rest? Their names drowned with the tide. Either the authorities erased them, or they never bothered to write them down in the first place. That's not an accident, it's strategy. Erasure is quieter than a gallows drop. You think back to stories whispered below deck, of women who tried to plead innocence or madness or pregnancy, of sailors who swore they'd seen their captain disguise herself as a cabin boy, of governors who knew full well a woman was among the crew but chose not to say so. Yet, sometimes, the secrecy wasn't about protecting the pirate. It was about shielding the system. One quirky tidbit that doesn't make it into many textbooks. In some colonies, captured female pirates weren't listed by name at all. Just one woman, age unknown. Occasionally their gender was scratched out and corrected in the margins of dusty ledgers by confused clerks. Picture that. Your entire existence condensed to a footnote some guy scribbled beside a coffee stain. And yet, even in silence, these women had weight. You can almost feel it in your chest now. The pressure, the suspense. Somewhere between the truth and the waves, their stories drift. Some were hanged, some disappeared, and some the scholars still argue about. Experts debate whether certain pirate queens were ever caught, or whether they staged their own deaths and lived quietly inland under assumed names. You shuffle forward with the others, boots clanging on the dock. People gather to watch. This is a performance after all, a reminder. Don't steal, don't rebel, and especially, don't do it while being a woman. You glance to your side and spot a fellow prisoner, another woman. She nods once. The faintest smirk. Not all pirates died afraid. The chains dig deeper into your wrists as you step off the ship and onto the dock, where the wood beneath your feet feels less like a surface and more like a stage. Eyes follow you, some jeering, some curious, but most indifferent. You're not just a pirate now. You're a symbol, a lesson, a warning. And no one in the crowd seems particularly surprised that one of the pirates is a woman. Your clothes cling to you, salt-stained, ripped and blood-crusted in places. A soldier sneers and calls you wench. Another says something about making an example. but even he can't quite hide the unease in his voice. You're not what he expected, and that's part of what made female pirates so dangerous. You weren't just breaking laws. You were breaking rules that people didn't even write down, the unspoken expectations of womanhood. Your feet ache as they march you down a cobbled path toward the magistrate's office, but you know enough from the others. You probably won't even see a real trial, not if you're unlucky, and definitely not if they've already decided who you are. Pirate, woman, problem. A funny thing though, trials for male pirates were often short, brutal, and meticulously recorded. But for women, history loses its voice. There are scraps, of course. You've heard of one woman who got 2 days to plead her case in a Jamaica courthouse, only for her name to vanish from the records immediately after. Another supposedly confessed, but her confession was written down in a different handwriting, likely by someone with an agenda. You wonder which future scholar will debate whether your own final words were ever your own, and if you get no trial at all, well, that happens too. A captain once told you of a woman taken off the coast of the Bahamas. They never even let her off the ship, tied her to the mast, waited until nightfall, then tossed her overboard in a weighted sack. Easier than paperwork, cheaper than rope. Still, the whisper of a chance exists. If you're brought to court, you might use the one defence that women pirates clung to for dear life: pregnancy. Known as pleading the belly, it wasn't a guarantee, but it was the only card many had to play. If a woman was with child, even the harshest colonial courts often delayed her execution, in some cases indefinitely. No one wanted the scandal of killing a pregnant woman. Even pirates got this sliver of mercy, sometimes. Of course, it wasn't foolproof. You've heard rumours of women stuffing cloth under their corsets to fake a bump, hoping the midwife wouldn't look too closely. And sometimes it worked. Other times, not so much. One legend says a woman in Port Royal tried that trick and was exposed by a cat. Yes, a literal cat, jumping on her stomach during the examination. You'll never know if that one's true, but you hope it is. At least it's got flair. Scholars remain divided on whether colonial courts believed women pirates were inherently more deceptive or more naive. Some argued that women couldn't possibly have chosen the pirate life on their own, that they must have been coerced by a lover, or confused, or mentally unwell. Others believed they were far more manipulative than the men, and therefore more dangerous. The contradiction is exhausting. But what's more exhausting is that your fate might depend on who's in the room. An old judge who once lost a daughter to sea fever might show pity. A young magistrate with something to prove might hang you just to be remembered. It's not about guilt or innocence. It's about performance, and your body is now part of the script. There's a moment of pause as they lead you past a jail. You spot a barred window and a face, female, thin, sunken-eyed, pressing against the iron grate. Her gaze meets yours, recognition, solidarity, or just curiosity. Either way, it anchors something inside you. You're not the first, you won't be the last, and so you're marched into the courthouse, where the ceiling leaks and the floor smells like mildew and something worse. A bored clerk scribbles your name wrong. The guard doesn't bother correcting him. A prosecutor reads from a crumpled parchment that refers to you as the female offender dressed as a man. You weren't. Not this time, but it doesn't matter now. In the lull that follows, your mind drifts. You picture the open sea again. The wild, lawless vastness, wind in your hair, salt on your lips, laughter around a campfire of stolen rum. That version of you feels far away now, like a dream someone else had. Maybe it was, or maybe, just maybe, she still lingers beneath the surface. Whisper 1 in the comments below if this tale charms your heart, or 2 if it sends shivers down your spine. You sit, shackled, on a crooked wooden bench as the magistrate clears his throat and calls for silence. His wig is slightly askew, powdered face pocked with age, but his eyes gleam with something sharper than weariness. Maybe it's ambition, maybe it's contempt, maybe it's the thrill of being the man who gets to pass judgment on a pirate. A woman pirate, no less. They call you by your wrong name again. You correct them. No one listens. The room smells of ink, sweat, and decaying parchment. You can feel every eye on you, some with curiosity, others with disgust, and a few with something more complex. A group of women in bonnets whisper in the corner pew. You wonder what they're saying. Is it judgment? Or admiration? After all, you've done what many of them only ever daydreamed about. You've lived free, wild, unruled, and now you're paying the price. They bring up her, Anne Bonny, always Anne. You know the story by heart. She sailed with Calico Jack Rackham and Mary Read, got caught, dragged to trial in Jamaica, wore a red bodice and looked the judges in the eyes when she said she regretted nothing. The tale is famous, and yet details still shift like sand in an hourglass. Some records say she begged for mercy, others claim she laughed in their faces. A few insist she was pregnant, which granted her a temporary stay of execution, but no one can say what happened after. No burial, no release papers, no confirmed death, just disappearance. Anne Bonny's story is the compass point all female pirates are measured by. But even her story is more ghost than map. Scholars still debate whether she was ever truly imprisoned, or if she had connections, wealthy ones, that pulled strings behind the scenes. A few fringe historians argue she married quietly and lived to old age in Cuba. Others believe she was executed under an alias to avoid public spectacle. And still others think she faked her pregnancy and escaped entirely. As you listen to the accusations hurled at you, marauding, theft, impersonating a man, that one again, inciting violence, you realise this isn't really about what you did. It's about what you represent. You're not a person anymore. You're an idea, one they don't like. Your stomach growls. No one notices. A guard leans over and mutters something about how Anne Bonny supposedly punched a judge once. You don't respond. You're too busy staring at the courtroom ceiling, where the plaster peels in a line that looks like a coastline you once raided. Or maybe imagined. Funny what the brain clings to when there's nothing left to hold. Then someone steps forward. A witness. You recognise him. One of your crew. You thought he died. Turns out he didn't. Worse, he's testifying against you. He says you were ruthless, that you gave the orders, that you threatened to slit a sailor's throat if he didn't obey. He's lying. But he's doing it with such charm that even the clerk nods along as he writes. The real kicker? This man used to brag about your skill with a boarding hook, said you were the best shot on the ship, called you captain when he thought it mattered. Now he calls you that woman. It stings, even though you saw it coming. And here comes the quirky detail you never expected. Your jury. Half of them have no idea women even became pirates. One older juror gasps out loud when your deeds are read, as if female piracy were some new invention, like powdered wigs or flaming rum. The ignorance is almost impressive. Still, it might work in your favour. Maybe they think you're too rare to hang. Maybe they'll let you rot in a cell instead, forgotten like mould behind wallpaper. Experts remain divided on whether Anne Bonny and Mary Read received special treatment because of their fame, or if the colonial government simply didn't know what to do with them. Women didn't fit neatly into the existing system of pirate punishment. No one had written a script for this part yet, and now here you are, unscripted. The magistrate sighs dramatically. "We will reconvene tomorrow," he says. The room exhales as one. The guards grab your arms and haul you up. Your legs are stiff, joints aching, dignity thinner than your worn-out boots. But still, you walk out without stumbling. You hope Anne Bonny would have done the same. You pass the witness box on your way out. That traitor doesn't meet your eyes. Coward. They throw you into a tiny cell, damp, dark and close. The walls sweat with mildew. There's no bedding, just a bit of straw that smells faintly of rats. You curl into the corner, breathe through your mouth, and try to remember the feeling of the wind on your face at full sail. You wonder if Anne Bonny ever slept on straw. Night passes, but you barely sleep. The jail cell groans with every gust of sea wind, and the straw beneath you crawls with life you'd rather not identify. You stare at the cracked stones in the wall, tracking the movement of a fat spider dragging its dinner toward a crevice. Your back aches. Your mouth tastes of iron and salt. And your thoughts keep circling the same two questions. Will I hang, or will they forget me? You remember someone once saying that pirates didn't fear death, but that wasn't true. What they really feared was obscurity, being lost to time, being erased. And for women, that's exactly what the system was designed to do. When the door creaks open at dawn, a pair of boots steps into view. He's not one of the guards. He's wearing priest's robes, ink-stained at the cuff, and he smells like candle wax and dusty books. "I've come to record your confession," he says. You raise an eyebrow. "Don't hold your breath." He chuckles, as if that's part of some quaint ritual, then takes a seat on an overturned bucket. You'd be surprised how many confess, even the women. He opens a leather-bound ledger, flips through blank pages. Especially the women. You glare at him. Especially, huh? He shrugs. Men brag. Women reflect. You don't dignify that with a response. As he scribbles some meaningless preamble, you notice the quill in his hand is trembling ever so slightly. You're reminded again that despite their wigs and titles, these people are still just people. Scared, fallible, painfully human. And humans tend to panic when they can't categorize you. A woman with a sword and a crew? That doesn't fit. Not in their world. So instead of fitting you in, they file you away. The priest asks about your turn to wickedness. You roll your eyes. He asks again. You answer with silence. Finally, he closes the ledger and says, "You know, some say Anne Bonny didn't really die." You blink. There's talk she escaped, bribed a guard, slipped away under moonlight. He leans in, voice dropping. "Some say she dressed as a servant girl and caught a ship to New Orleans." You smirk. "Sounds romantic." "It sounds possible," he says. "You pirates are good at slipping through cracks." And there it is. That little flutter in your chest. The idea. The maybe. Maybe Anne Bonny did make it out. Maybe Mary Read didn't die of fever. Maybe there are quiet lives being lived under fake names in distant ports. Maybe you could be one of them. But first you have to survive. The next day's trial resumes with little ceremony. More witnesses, none of them friendly. The judge looks annoyed to still be here. A new rumour floats in from the gallery. Someone on the jury thinks you're too pretty to hang. Another says you're too dangerous to spare. You don't know which insult is worse. And then, oh, the irony, they call you to speak. You rise slowly, shackles clinking, the room settling into a hush. You could plead the belly now, you could cry, you could promise to reform, but you don't. You stand there, posture straight, lips dry and say, "I regret none of it. The sea was mine, the wind obeyed me, and I lived freer than any of you ever will." Someone gasps, someone else claps. It's quickly silenced. You're not sure if you just signed your death sentence or carved your name into something bigger. Tap 3 in the comments below if this story makes you smile, or 4 if it leaves you chilled. Experts still debate whether female pirates were more harshly sentenced than their male counterparts, or simply erased more thoroughly. Historical records from the Caribbean show conflicting outcomes. Some women were hanged quickly, others were never heard from again. But the why? That's the foggy part. No clear pattern, just silence. The courtroom clears out. The priest with the trembling quill lingers near the door. Before he leaves, he says quietly, "If you ever make it out of this, pick a good name, something dull. That's how you hide." You almost thank him, but you don't. Pirates don't thank jailers. That night, as the moon casts long shadows across your cell, you wonder what your new name would be, if you ever got to choose one. Your feet are raw, and your wrist blistered when they drag you out again. This time, not to the courtroom, but to the harbour cells. These aren't the sort of cells built for anyone long term. They smell worse. They're darker. And they have bars that don't just keep people in. They let the sea in too. The floor floods twice a day with the tide. You learn quickly not to sit during those hours. You lean against the damp stone wall, shivering from the salt water soaking your legs. You're no longer part of any legal process. You've entered the waiting zone. Too pirate to pardon. Too inconvenient to hang today. In the cell beside you, there's a woman who barely talks. Older, thin as rope, sun-darkened and missing 2 fingers on her right hand. You only know her name because a guard accidentally says it while tossing in her food. Francesca. You ask what she's in for. She doesn't answer. Not for days. Then, one night, while the tide laps around your ankles and you're both wide-eyed with sleeplessness, she says, "Used to sail under de Gramont, off Tortuga. You nearly drop your tin bowl. De Gramont, the French privateer turned pirate lord. You'd heard his name whispered by your old captain. Ruthless, strategic, and dead for at least 20 years. You were his navigator, you ask? She chuckles. No, girl, I was his cook." And just like that, the silence cracks open. Francesca begins to tell stories, not all at once, and never when the guards are listening. She weaves tales of ships lost in hurricanes, midnight mutinies, and stashed chests that were never claimed. She once smuggled an entire crew of wounded pirates onto a priest's fishing boat, disguised them as monks and prayed they didn't speak. They didn't, because most were unconscious. "Did they hang you?" you ask her one night. Not really meaning to, she shrugs. "Tried, but a storm hit the island the night before, flooded the gallows, Governor drowned in his sleep. By the time they found another rope, I was gone." You can't tell if she's lying, but something in her eyes says she's not. Francesca becomes your compass in those days. Quiet, observant, and sharp as broken glass. She teaches you how to fold your shirt into a pillow, how to plug the lowest grate hole with straw, to buy yourself 10 extra minutes when the tide rises. She even shows you how to keep your hands warm by flexing only certain finger joints in rhythm with your heartbeat. These aren't the kinds of things written in sailors' manuals. These are secrets passed between survivors. She also tells you about the others, the ones who came before. A woman named Rose, who once commanded her own sloop and was buried alive beneath a collapsed dock after capture. Another, Isabel, allegedly poisoned an entire ship's water supply to avoid arrest, dying with them rather than be taken. And a third, called Black Maria, whose name still terrified dockworkers in Havana even 20 years after her execution. They say her eyes never shut after she died, that her ghost walks the gallows at low tide. One quirky tale Francesca insists is true involves a female pirate who disguised herself as a man so successfully that when she died, the authorities buried her in a male plot, and only later did they find out the truth when her lover carved a heart into her gravestone complete with the name Eliza. Scholars remain divided on whether this gravestone ever existed or was just the kind of poetic flourish seafarers love to repeat. Still, you kind of hope it's true. Pirates deserved poetry too. During one stormy night, a guard, drunk, clumsy, leans too close to Francesca's bars. She doesn't stab him. She whispers, says something in French, low and slow. The man pales, drops his keys, and leaves without another word. You never find out what she said. The days bleed together, the tide comes and goes. No one brings up your trial again. The priest never returns. The courtroom has moved on to newer, more cooperative criminals. At one point you spot a rat swimming across your cell. You name it Captain Nibs. It's the only thing in the entire harbour with any rank. One morning the water reaches your waist and you genuinely consider swimming for it. But Francesca stops you with a look. "They want you to panic," she says. "If you drown trying to escape, they don't have to hang you." It's always political, isn't it? She tells you flatly that you have 3 choices: survive and escape, be quietly executed and forgotten, or fade into a life somewhere far away as someone else entirely. You ask her which she chose. She smiles and says nothing. The tide doesn't rise that morning. That's the first sign something's different. You've come to expect it like clockwork, your damp, unwanted ritual. But today, the sea stays low. Still, even the rats seem uncertain. Then come the boots, heavy ones, more than usual. You and Francesca trade a glance, but she doesn't move, just tightens her grip on her tin bowl like it's a weapon. A man in a powdered wig and fine boots arrives with 2 guards and a clerk trailing behind him, scribbling furiously. "We're clearing the harbour cells," he announces as if this is good news. "All female detainees to be processed and reassigned." Reassigned. That's a word you've never heard used for pirates before. The guard unlocks your cell. You step out slowly, blinking into the overcast light, unsure whether to feel relief or fear. Francesca follows without a word, her steps steady as ever. You're her shadow now, trailing her in silence, pretending your knees aren't shaking. You're taken not to a court, not to a scaffold, but to a carriage. It's the strangest moment of the past month. The interior smells of leather and orange peel. You sit opposite a woman in a high-collared dress, gloves tight at the wrist, and a face as unreadable as a closed book. She introduces herself as Madame Wilton, representative of the House of Reform. That sounds suspiciously like a euphemism. She explains in clipped, overly polite tones that certain captured female offenders, especially those whose cases are complicated, are sometimes sent to female houses of correction. Apparently you're not to be hanged. Not yet. Not if they can turn you into a project. You glance toward Francesca, but she's not beside you anymore. You twist to look out the carriage window. She's still standing in the yard, unmoving, watching the door shut between you. One nod. That's all. You never see her again. The carriage rattles through cobbled streets, past butcher stalls and taverns, past women with baskets and children with sticks. People who've never been pirates, never slept in seawater, never held a sword with blood on it. You're not sure whether to envy them or pity them. You're brought to a grey, square building with no sign. Just a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. A woman answers, another gloved, tight-lipped figure, and you're escorted through clean, cold halls to a plain room with a cot, a pitcher of water, and a copy of Psalms on the table. The door shuts. You're alone. So this is it. Not the gallows, not the ocean, just a room. It's eerily quiet. That night they bring food. Not gruel. Real food. Bread. Cheese. A cup of something warm and faintly spiced. You eye it like it might explode, then eat it all in 3 minutes flat. You lie on the cot, staring at the ceiling, wondering what comes next. A job scrubbing floors, sewing flags for the Navy, repenting in handwritten letters for imaginary crimes. You didn't expect a cell with nice pillows. It makes you nervous. You recall a story Francesca once told. A woman pirate sentenced not to death, but to reform through righteous matrimony. She was forcibly married to a port official in Antigua, who used her name to gain clout and then locked her in an attic for 6 years. She escaped by bribing a maid with a set of false teeth carved from driftwood. You're still unclear how that part worked, but the image has stuck with you ever since. The scholarly debate on these reassignments is murky. Some experts believe female pirates were often quietly absorbed into colonial society through forced domesticity, marriage, convents, labour camps. Others argue these programs were more about public image than actual reform. A woman pirate in chains is a liability. But a woman in a bonnet pushing a broom, that's manageable. Still, you wonder, how many of those reformed pirates slipped away once the guards got lazy? You start taking inventory of the room, the hinges on the window, the weight of the pitcher, the floorboard with a suspicious creak. The habits come back quickly. Your cot creaks as you roll over and whisper to yourself, "You didn't hang." And that has to count for something. Morning comes slowly, with thin grey light slipping through the cracks in the shutters. The room smells faintly of lavender and starch. You sit up on the cot and stretch, the stiffness in your back reminding you that comfort is a performance in this place. The softness is calculated. A soft bed, a quiet room, a bit of warm bread. It's all part of the trap. You're not free, you're just manageable. The door clicks open without a knock. A tall woman with a narrow face and a steel spine enters, carrying a folded grey dress over one arm. "You'll wear this," she says, "and report to the East Wing for duty." She doesn't wait for a response, just tosses the fabric onto the end of your cot and exits. You unfold it. It's plain, sturdy, meant for scrubbing floors or peeling vegetables, not for rebellion, not for climbing rigging or storming a merchant sloop at midnight. Still, you pull it on. No use fighting that battle, yet. You're led through the building by a tight-lipped matron who doesn't speak unless she has to. The halls are lined with women like you, pirates, thieves, rebels, all trimmed down into housemaids. Some move in silence, others glance up just long enough to assess you, then move on. No one smiles. You wonder how many of them once held cutlasses and stood on burning decks. Your assignment? Laundry. You're handed a basket of soaking linens and directed toward a courtyard with giant wooden tubs and a pump that takes 3 minutes of pumping just to release a sad trickle. You kneel, elbows deep in soap foam and silence, and try not to think of the sea. But it doesn't take long for you to spot it. The strange little routines. One woman hangs sheets in a pattern that doesn't make sense. Another one always leaves a rag over the pump's handle when she's finished. You begin to notice hand signals, glances, pauses in conversation. This isn't just laundry. It's code. That night, during your assigned hour of reflection, another inmate passes by your room and drops a scrap of paper through the doorway. You unfold it slowly. 3 words, hastily scrawled. "Do you sail?" You don't respond. Not yet. But your heart beats faster. There's a rhythm to the place, you realise. A structure that isn't on any official schedule. And some of the women walk like sailors. Heels down first, shoulders loose, always scanning for exits. One quirky fact you recall from your early pirate days: women in 17th century laundries were known for smuggling messages, keys, even weapons in baskets of folded clothing. One infamous case involved a dagger sewn into a bishop's laundry collar. He never wore it, obviously. It found its target before he ever saw the starch. The scholars remain divided on how many women reformed in these houses, actually escaped versus how many simply disappeared, lost to name changes, illness, marriage, or purposeful silence. But you start to see now how it could be done, with enough planning, with enough quiet loyalty. Your second day in the courtyard, a woman with red-streaked hair named Elna hands you a dripping sheet and whispers, "Francesca says hello." You nearly drop it. "I saw her once," Elna continues. "A long time ago. She doesn't forget faces." The guards are watching, but you manage a slight nod. Elna smiles faintly. By your third day, you've found 5 secret hand signals. A 6th, scratched into the bottom of a laundry tub. You know which window latch on the 3rd floor is loose. You've found the keyhole in the north gate that hasn't been oiled in months, which means it hasn't been used, yet, but maybe soon. You dream of ships again, not the broken ones, not the prisons, the real ships, with patched sails and half-drunk helmsmen and hammocks that swing to the beat of your own breath, of wind that doesn't ask questions. The grey dress scratches at your neck as you lie down that night. You mutter into the dark, "I still sail." And somewhere in the building another pirate probably smiles. The grey dress hangs a little looser on you now, not because you've lost weight, but because you've learned how to move in it, how to shrink inside it when necessary, and how to stretch beyond it when no one's watching. A week passes, then another. Time here moves like thick molasses in winter, but underneath that slow drip there's a heartbeat pulsing, secret, steady, deliberate. You become part of the rhythm. Laundry days, quiet nights. A cough passed down the corridor that means not safe. A dropped button that means wait. You catch on fast. You always did. It's not so different from ship life. Just the sails have been replaced with aprons, and the maps with whispered paths carved through this house of pretend piety. One morning, during roll call, you spot a face you haven't seen before. A new woman, younger, nervous, the sort of nervous that makes her clumsy. She drops a ladle and apologises in 3 languages. The matrons scowl. The rest of the women stay quiet. That night she ends up cleaning floors next to you. Her name's Margot. She's from the Canary Islands. You ask her how she got caught. "I was caught pretending not to be a pirate," she says. "Turns out I'm not a good liar." You like her instantly. She asks if you think anyone ever actually reforms here. You shrug. "Maybe," you say, "but not the ones with salt in their blood." And Margot nods like she's been waiting her whole life to hear that sentence. That's when you start meeting at night. Not just you and Margot, but 5 others too. Elna leads. She's been in the house the longest. Her arms are strong from lifting baskets, but you can still see the sword calluses on her fingers. There's Inez, who never speaks above a whisper, but can unlock a door with a bent spoon. And 2 others, twins maybe, who don't say anything at all but are always watching. The group has a plan, not tomorrow, not next week, but soon, and it starts with a boat. Turns out there's a laundry delivery schedule. Once every fortnight the clean linens are taken by cart to the governor's mansion by a driver named Lowell, who thinks with his stomach. He's already been bribed 3 times. The only reason he hasn't let anyone escape yet is because no one's dared to follow through. Yet, you've got one chance. The quirky part, the laundry baskets are big enough to fit a person if they curl tight enough. That's not speculation. You test it. It's cramped, uncomfortable, and makes your knees ache for hours after, but it can be done. The problem is the gate. The house's north gate is rusted, stiff, and rarely used. But Elna swears it's unlocked twice a month for deliveries only. You'll need to grease the hinges, you'll need to muffle the sound, and you'll need someone to cause a distraction in the courtyard. Something loud, dramatic, believable. Preferably something involving fire. That's where Margot comes in. She knows how to make a spark from laundry starch and a cracked flintstone. You don't ask how she learned that. Probably the same place she learned to fake a sailor's handwriting and forge passes. The plan unfolds like a map drawn in steam. Everyone memorises their roles. Everyone swears they won't break if caught. And for the first time in weeks you feel the sea calling again, not with wind and waves, but through the burning itch of possibility behind your ribs. Scholars still debate how many female pirates escaped prisons like these. Records are sketchy. Some historians believe escapes were exaggerated in popular tales. Others say the lack of records is the evidence that the escapees didn't just disappear. They erased themselves clean. You dream about that erasure. What name would you choose? Where would you go? Could you find another ship? A port where no one knows your face? Could you sail under the moon again and leave this soft trap of lavender and psalms behind? That night, Elna brings you a piece of stale bread shaped like a ship's prow. "Tomorrow," she says, and suddenly your heart is a drum, pounding harder than cannon fire. The morning arrives grey and heavy, the kind of sky that presses low on the shoulders and makes everything feel like a secret. You dress slower than usual, every movement rehearsed. No one speaks. The halls feel thinner, the courtyard quieter, even the birds on the windowsills seem to be holding their breath. You join the laundry group. Same baskets, same route, same routine on the surface. But you know what's about to happen. Every step feels like walking the plank. Margot glances your way only once, and it's barely more than a blink. The others keep their heads down, blending in perfectly with the rhythm of the work, invisible until they don't want to be. You glance toward the north gate. Just a door. Just wood and rust and hinges that haven't squeaked once since Inez started slipping cooking oil beneath them at night. One hinge at a time over a week. Clever girl. Lowell's cart rattles into place exactly on schedule. He chews a piece of dried pear and doesn't look anyone in the eye. He's nervous. That's good. Nervous men tend to follow directions. Then, as planned, Margot drops the torch. It's not a torch, really. Just a splinter of wood soaked in oil and disguised as firewood for the cook stove. It clatters down the kitchen step, smacks the side of the building, and then, whoosh. The fire is small at first, manageable, but panic is about timing, not size. And right on cue, the shouting begins. Guards rush past. Matrons drop their ledgers. Someone screams, "The pantry's gone up." And in the chaos, you dive into the basket. It's tight. You curl into yourself, bones grinding against woven wicker, the lid dropping with a soft thud, and one last whisper of air. You count your breaths. You don't move. You don't cough, even as the fabric inside smells like old vinegar and damp linen. Lowell lifts the basket. You sway, heart thundering in your ears. If he stumbles, if a matron checks, if the cart hits a bump, any of it could unravel you. But it doesn't. You feel the wheels turning, the cart rattling forward, the muffled sound of boots, voices, gates, the groan of rusted iron parting like reluctant jaws. And then, air. Different air. City air. Horse dung, cooking grease, tar, life. You're outside. He unloads the baskets one by one. Yours last. "Be quick," he mutters. Then he's gone. You wait a count of 30, then lift the lid a crack. The alley's empty. You roll out, knees buckling, ankles tingling from numbness. But you're up, and you run. Not like a sailor. Not like a pirate. Just a woman with a pounding heart and a very short head start. You duck through side alleys, past shuttered bakeries and crowded taverns. You peel off the grey dress and dump it into a gutter. Underneath, you wear the undershirt and trousers you'd hidden beneath, stitched hastily from scraps. You look like a stable boy now. No one glances twice. At the docks, you slow. Ships rock gently. Sailors curse and laugh and argue over barrels. And you remember the rhythm of it all, the creak of rope, the slap of water, the way time bends at the harbour. You find a schooner that looks neglected enough to be desperate and polished enough to be seaworthy. You approach the quartermaster. Tell him your name is Thomas. Tell him you cook and mend sails and don't ask questions. He sizes you up, shrugs. "We sail at dawn. Don't be late." That night, you sleep beneath an overturned skiff, the sea just feet away. Somewhere in the House of Reform, Margot is probably scrubbing soot off the wall, smiling to herself. One quirky tale you remember now. A woman named Catherine Hollow-Eye Duval once escaped prison by switching clothes with a dead washerwoman. They buried the corpse in her place. Catherine sailed again 2 weeks later under a new name and reportedly lived to 80, running a tavern in Nassau that only served former pirates. The jury's still out on whether any of it's true. But that's not the point, is it? What matters is this. You're not in a cell. You're not hanging. You're not forgotten. You're sailing again. The sea doesn't welcome you back like an old friend. It tests you first. At dawn, the sky's smeared with ash-coloured clouds, and the wind blows sharp and suspicious. You stand at the edge of the dock, watching the schooner's crew shuffle cargo aboard. No one looks twice at you. That's the gift of anonymity. Once you shed the name they cursed, you become invisible again. It's not freedom, not exactly. But it's close enough to make your lungs feel a little easier. You board with the others, not the last and not the first, Just another shadow in canvas trousers and sea-stained boots. The deck smells of oil, fish, and the kind of wood that's been soaked one too many times. The ship is called Maribel. She isn't fast, but she's steady. You like that. Fast ships bring attention. Steady ones survive storms. The quartermaster gives you a nod and points to your berth, a cramped wooden shelf below deck, just high enough to turn over in. You toss your sack onto it. All it contains is a spoon, a spare shirt, and a bit of salted pork. You lie back for a moment, letting the creak of the hull lull your heartbeat into rhythm with the waves. You're back at sea, but you're not a pirate now. At least, not yet. The captain is a wiry, salt-flecked man named Bryn. Welsh, or pretending to be. He's the kind of man who smiles with one side of his face and watches with the other. He doesn't ask questions, just tells you where to stand, when to pull, and how not to get in the way. You obey. For now. You chop vegetables in the galley. You patch torn canvas with thread and cursing fingers. You swab the deck until your back stings and your palms bleed. It's humbling, but it's also familiar, and more importantly, it's safe. Or so you think. It only takes 3 days for trouble to find you again. A storm rolls in from the southeast, fast and mean. The sky goes black before noon, and the sea rises with a growl like it's coming to finish what the gallows couldn't. You hold the mainsail rope tight as the wind threatens to tear your arms from their sockets. Rain lashes your face. You shout without hearing your own voice. But somewhere in the chaos, someone sees you. Really sees you. A crewman named Anders. Thin, young, too nosy for his own good. You catch his eyes lingering too long. Not at your hands, at your shape. That night after the storm, he corners you near the barrel locker. You're still soaked, muscles aching, and your knife is 3 steps away. Too far. You're not who you said you were, he says. You're not Thomas. You meet his gaze. No, I'm better. It's not a threat, not exactly, but it lands like one. He hesitates, licks his lips. Then, with a grin too wide, he says, I could tell the captain, unless... You know that look. You've seen it in port towns and back alleys. You've heard it in the courtroom. You've been sentenced by that look more times than you can count. But before he finishes, something happens you didn't expect. Someone else appears. A voice behind him, calm, female. She's with me. It's Margot. Margot. On your ship. In borrowed clothes, hair tucked under a cap, her grin unmistakable. Anders turns, startled. Margot's blade is already drawn. She doesn't stab him. She just lets him see it. Say a word, she says, and I'll let her finish what I start. Anders blinks, then vanishes into the dark. You and Margot don't speak for a long time. Just breathe. How? You finally ask. Another cart, she says. 2 days after you. Took the long way. Spent a night in a fishing net. You shake your head, half laughing. I told you I'm not a good liar, she adds, but I'm great at exits. One quirky tale rises in your memory, of a pair of escaped female pirates who reunited in Saint-Malo disguised as spice merchants. They ran a tea house so suspiciously successful that it was raided 3 times, and not once did anyone find contraband. Legend has it they were hiding weapons inside cinnamon canisters. Experts still argue whether that's real or just another sailor's exaggeration. But right now, with Margot beside you, and the sea stretching dark and wide beyond the deck, it doesn't feel far-fetched, she leans in. We're not finished, you know. You nod. We never are. You and Margot settle into the ship's rhythm like 2 mismatched but sharp-edged pieces of driftwood. You're not officers, not yet, just 2 more hands aboard Maribel, but slowly, quietly, you begin to carve out space. At first, it's in the small things. Keeping ropes coiled properly, waking before the others, mending sails faster than expected. Then it's in the eyes of the crew. They start deferring to you, asking questions, listening when you give orders, even if they're not official. Old habits, it turns out, are hard to kill. Margot, for her part, becomes something of a shipboard legend overnight. She wins a bet by guessing the exact moment the wind would shift. She flips a fish-gutting knife between her fingers faster than anyone else dares try. And one night she sings, a low, lilting song in a language no one recognises. It stops conversations mid-sentence, not because it's beautiful, though it is, but because it sounds like something ancient, like it was never meant to be sung in front of firelight. You ask her later where she learned it. From my mother, she says. She said it keeps the ghosts off your shoulders. And you believe her, but ghosts aren't your biggest problem. Authority is. 3 weeks into your new life, Maribel makes port at a quiet colonial outpost that bristles with redcoats and steeples. The kind of place that claims to hate pirates, but has a tavern named the Jolly Cutlass. You go ashore with 2 others to collect rations and quietly scout the dock for gossip. And that's when you hear it. 2 men, seated near the tavern door, sipping rum that smells like tar and bark, are talking in low tones about a woman pirate who escaped prison. Their description is close, too close. One of them jokes that she's probably disguised as a fishwife or hiding in a barrel. You don't linger to hear the rest. Back on the ship, you pull Margot aside and lay it all out. Her face doesn't change, but her fingers twitch. "We've got to go," you say. "Soon," she nods. "Tonight." The tricky part is not leaving, it's disappearing. If the crew gets even a hint of your past, they might turn you in. You've earned some respect, yes, but respect doesn't always stand up to a reward notice. That night, you and Margot pack what little you have: a flint, rope, bread, knives. No names, no papers, just instinct. You don't take a boat. That would be too obvious. Instead, you hide in the back of a fish wagon headed inland. The stink is overwhelming, like the ghost of Poseidon himself crawled inside your lungs, but it gets you past the gates. By dawn, you're off the main road, somewhere between sugarcane fields and banana groves. You find a hollow near a tree that smells of sap and ash and collapse there, barely able to keep your eyes open. When you wake, Margot is gone. Just for a moment. She returns with a loaf of stolen bread, small flask of rainwater, and a satisfied grin. "I found a place," she says. "It's not much, but it floats." She leads you to a shack, half rotted, half finished, half sinking. A third of a house, basically, but beside it, moored in a quiet inlet overgrown with mangroves, is a boat. Not a ship. Not yet. But a boat with bones, with sails that could be patched, with a rudder that turns. It needs a name, of course. And here comes the quirky bit. Margot insists it be named after your prison cell number. You laugh, but she's serious. "That's where it started," she says, "and it'll make for a hell of a story one day." Experts still debate how many escaped female pirates rebuilt new ships and rejoined the trade under new identities. Some claim the number was low, most likely too wounded or hunted to continue, but others argue that many simply went quiet, avoided the spotlight, and passed into pirate folklore under false names and quiet flags. You begin repairing the boat together. Hammer, stitch, lift, tie. Slowly, day by day, the boat stops looking abandoned and starts looking patient, like it was waiting for you. You work until your hands bleed, you sleep under the stars, you eat whatever grows nearby, and one night by firelight Margot asks, "What'll you do when we're ready?" You think for a moment, then you smile. Something noisy. Your fingers are raw, your back is bent, your nails are chipped and half blackened from tar and splinters, but the boat, your boat, floats. It takes 4 weeks of sweat, swearing, stolen nails and makeshift tools, but she's finally seaworthy. Barely. You patch the sails with flour sacks, reinforce the rudder with scavenged fence posts, and hammer old oarlocks into place like they were always meant to be there. The hull still lifts a little to port, but Margot insists it's just the boat's personality. She names it Cell 17. You roll your eyes every time she says it, but you don't argue. There's something poetic about it, something stubborn. You're not pirates, not officially, not yet. But you are floating again, and that's the first step. Your plan is simple. Lie low, make small trades, gather supplies, and build trust at a few isolated ports. Then, when the time is right, you'll find a proper ship, one with teeth, one with room for a crew. First stop, Isla Lagato, a little-known island off the trade routes, mostly home to fisherfolk, smugglers, and one very talkative goat named Sebastian. The place smells like seaweed, old rum, and things you're not supposed to name. The locals eye you with suspicion at first, but Margot charms them within a day. She wins a cooking contest using mango, conch, and what she swears was definitely not iguana. By the next morning, you're getting nods at the dock and being offered work mending nets. It's during one of those net-mending afternoons that you meet her, Inez. She's older than you, wiry, sharp-eyed, and smokes a pipe that smells like cinnamon and secrets. She watches you work in silence for 10 minutes before saying, "You've handled rope before, not the dock kind, the other kind." You look up, say nothing, She nods. Thought so. That night she invites you to her hut on the far side of the island. You bring Margot. You don't go anywhere alone these days. Inez offers you rum and, without preamble, says, "I used to run a crew." You nearly drop your cup. She tells you about the Las Furias, a ship crewed entirely by women, hidden for years among the Spanish trade routes under a merchant cover. They raided 36 ships before they were caught. By betrayal, of course. She survived. Most didn't. "What happened to the ship?" you ask. She grins through her pipe smoke. "Sank it myself. Wouldn't give those bastards the satisfaction." She leans in, lowering her voice. "But the map that I kept." You don't breathe. She produces a worn scrap of vellum from a hollow in her floorboard, unrolls it. It's stained, smudged, torn in one corner, but unmistakably real. A cove, a buried cache, a spot along the Mosquito Coast where her crew stashed everything they couldn't carry when the Las Furias went down. "Weapons," she says, "powder, a fast tender boat, maybe even uniforms." "Why tell us?" Margot asks, her voice cautious. Inez shrugs. "Because you're the first to come through here with fire in your eyes. And because someone gave me a second chance once too." Scholars still debate whether Las Furias ever truly existed. Some argue the stories are just romanticised whispers passed from woman to woman in dark taverns. Others claim a Spanish logbook once listed a female captain with no name, no flag, and a crew who vanished mid-sea, leaving only drifting sails behind. You don't need proof. You've got a map and a chance. The next morning, you and Margot stand on the bow of Cell 17, staring out toward the horizon where the Mosquito Coast begins. The wind is light. The sea is calm, but you both know what's coming. This isn't just survival anymore. It's reclamation. "Ready?" Margot asks. You look ahead. Always. The journey toward the Mosquito Coast is both too quiet and too long. Days pass in a steady rhythm of sunburn, salt crust, and the kind of endless horizon that makes you question whether land ever existed at all. At night, the sky spreads above like a black sail dusted with stars, and you and Margot take turns steering Cell 17 by the constellations, cross-checking Inez's map with the stars. You ration food, you patch leaks, you swap mosquitoes the size of thumbtacks, and you never quite stop looking over your shoulder, because somewhere out there, someone is still talking about you. Someone is still looking. But no one expects a pair of escaped female pirates to be bobbing along in a patched-up dinghy, whispering over scraps of vellum and avoiding major ports like plague-ridden ships. The map leads you to a jagged crescent of coastline that rises out of the sea like broken teeth. The bay is shallow and hard to spot from a distance. Clever, hidden, just as Inez promised. You row the last few yards under cover of mangroves. The water here smells like mud and mystery. Roots coil out of the brine like skeletal fingers. Something unseen splashes near the hull. You and Margot exchange glances but say nothing. You beach the boat on a soft patch of sand that shifts underfoot. Trees lean in close overhead, vines heavy with blossoms and humidity. It's the kind of place you could disappear into forever, and probably never be found. With the map held against a scrap of driftwood for a clipboard, you follow the trail inland. Every step is a guess, a gamble. You pass a fallen log that matches a marking on the map, a rock shaped like a turtle, a patch of ground where the air suddenly feels heavier. Then Margot stops. "Here," she says, crouching. You kneel beside her. The soil is soft, recently disturbed, or maybe just loose from time and tropical rain. Either way, it gives unto your hands. You dig with what you have. Hands, a scrap of driftwood, a cooking spoon. Hours pass. You sweat through your shirt. Mosquitoes bite. Your fingernails pack with dirt. But finally your hand hits something hard. Wood. You both freeze. A few more scrapes. A groan. A thunk. You uncover a chest barely the size of a child's coffin. Its corners are iron-bound. A lock rusted shut. You take a stone, smash it twice. On the third hit it gives way. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and damp linen, is everything Inez promised. And more. A set of pistols still gleaming with oil. A powder horn, a brass compass still ticking, 2 curved sabres, a set of blue jackets with gold trim, and at the very bottom, a leather-bound logbook marked in a language you don't recognise, but Margot does. "Basque," she says. "My grandmother taught me the numbers." You're quiet for a long time. The forest seems to hush around you. Even the insects pause. It's not just about gear. This is a rebirth. This is a ship in waiting. That night, you light no fire. You camp near the boat, one eye on the water, one ear tuned to the jungle. You take turns sleeping, knowing that people have died for less than what you just uncovered. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, you open the logbook and find a name scrawled across the back cover. Capitana D. Nothing else. Just the letter. You wonder who she was. There's an old sailor's tale about a female pirate who only signed her name with a single letter. Some say it was a symbol of defiance. Others say it was to protect her family name. Still others claim she had no name, only a title. Captain. The rest was earned at sea. Scholars still argue whether she was real. Some dismiss her as a symbol, an archetype of every nameless woman who lived and died by the tide. But here in your hands is her legacy. Real as splinters. By sunrise, you and Margot have made a decision. Cell 17 will sail no longer. She's too small now, too vulnerable. You need a bigger ship, and now you've got the map, the tools, the names, and the firepower to take one. Margot holds up one of the pistols, turning it over in her hands. This one's clean, she says, like it's been waiting. You grin. So are we. Taking a ship, as it turns out, is equal parts timing, nerve, and luck. Maybe a bit of madness, too. You and Margot sail south in Cell 17, quiet and light, stopping only at the smallest islands, trading fish and herbs for whispers. You're listening, for gossip, for names, for captains with short tempers, and crews with long grudges. You're not pirates yet, not exactly. But you're looking for the right ship to become one on. It takes a week before you hear about her, Amanisa, a brigantine docked at a sugar loading station off the coast of Honduras, mid-sized, lightly guarded, run by a fat merchant who inherited the vessel from his brother and barely knows port from starboard. She's fast but undercrewed. She's ripe. You arrive 2 days later, sunburned, silent, and ready. The plan is simple. Sneak aboard at night during a crew shift change, take the powder room first, lock the rudder, and confront the captain in his quarters before dawn. Not a full mutiny, more like a transfer of ownership, but nothing is ever that simple. You sneak aboard just before moonrise, skirts damp and knives oiled. Margot picks the supply hatch lock with a fishbone. You both slip below deck like shadows. Then, crash. Someone's already there. Voices, clanging, a scuffle. You freeze. Another crew is trying to steal the same ship. 3 of them. Big, loud, and not at all subtle. You and Margot exchange a glance. This wasn't in the plan. You don't hesitate. She lunges left. You go right. Steel meets flesh. Rope gets sliced. Someone curses in Portuguese. You slam one of them with a barrel lid and pin another with a crate. Within 10 seconds, it's over. One unconscious, one groaning, one locked in the brig below. Margot wipes her blade on her sleeve. Well, she says, I guess it's ours now. You reach the captain's quarters to find him drunk, pantsless, and utterly unaware that his ship is already changing hands. He protests vaguely, then passes out before finishing a sentence. You leave him tied up gently, with a note. Retired, with gratitude. The new crew. By dawn, the Amanisa is yours. She's beautiful, sleek lines, deep hull, 2 working cannon and room for at least 20 more souls. The sails are tattered, but the bones are solid. She smells like salt, molasses, and potential. You hoist the flag. Not a skull, not yet. Just a scrap of blue cloth stitched with a stitched gold X. Something new. Something no one else flies. The rest of that day is all ropes, shouts, mops, and laughter. And you and Margot clean blood off the deck, inventory supplies, check the weapons, map out nearby currents. She finds a book in the captain's trunk labelled Passenger Dues, and inside a list of bribes paid to colonial governors, including one addressed to the very prison you escaped from. Looks like he knew someone, she says. You both burn it. The quirky bit. Hidden in the navigation locker is a drawing. A crude pencil sketch of a woman. Barefoot, laughing, sabre drawn, signed simply, Air. She looks too much like Margot to ignore. Fan club, you tease. She shrugs. Can't help being unforgettable. That night, anchored in a quiet cove, you repaint the stern. It takes hours. The letters drip, but they're legible. Cell 17. Because names, like scars, mean more when they're earned. You spend the evening writing out a rough code, your own pirate's creed. Not for loot, not for vengeance, but for reclamation. A ship run by those who were thrown away, forgotten, silenced. You'll gather them one by one, the bruised, the clever, the half-hanged. Anyone with a good story and a better aim. You begin recruiting by rumour. Let the world whisper, 2 escaped pirates took a brigantine without firing a shot. Let them argue. Were they ghosts, demons, daughters of the sea? Let the scholars debate, is this just another tavern tale? And let you sail. By dawn you set your course east, toward deeper waters, toward legends, toward something like freedom. The open sea stretches before you like a blank page, daring you to write something scandalous across it. You and Margot take shifts at the helm, learning the new creaks of Cell 17. Her groaning rudder, the way she veers slightly to port in rough wind, her stubborn boom that won't stay tied down unless you curse at it in 3 languages. She's imperfect, but she's yours, and she sails beautifully. The crew is still just 2, but the ship doesn't mind, she doesn't need numbers yet. What she needs is direction, and that you have in spades. You follow the lesser lanes, the off-maps, the coral-cut paths that bigger ships avoid. You pass fishing boats and merchant sloops without so much as a raised brow. No one expects a full brigantine to be run by 2 women who sleep in turns and eat mostly dried mangoes and stolen beans. At night, you sit on the deck with Margot, sharpening blades and swapping ghost stories. She tells you about a ship that vanished in the Bight of Lyons, crew and all, and only its galley bell washed ashore, still ringing. You tell her about the time you saw a mermaid, or something like one, near Port St. George, who followed your ship for 3 days, then vanished the night your captain was stabbed in his sleep. It's a good kind of quiet, the kind where your hands stay busy and your thoughts get space to stretch. On the 6th day, you see smoke, a thin column just over the horizon. Not the kind from a cook fire, the kind that means panic, trouble, opportunity. You approach slowly, cautiously. It's a schooner, burning, listing in the water like a wounded animal. A single longboat rows away from it, crowded with maybe a dozen figures, frantic. Margot raises the spyglass. They're alive, she says. Barely. You weigh your choices. Saving them is risky. You don't know who they are. But you remember the day you nearly drowned, chained on a splintered deck, no one in sight, so you lower a rope. One by one, they climb aboard. Tired, wet, bleeding, grateful. All women, all ages. Their clothes are singed, their hands calloused, and their eyes familiar. You recognize the look, escape, desperation, and the smallest ember of something that hasn't died yet. The oldest among them introduces herself as Tula. We were slaves, she says plainly, being transported. Then someone set fire to the hold. You don't ask who. The way she says someone makes it clear she's not naming names until it's safe to do so. You feed them. You give them blankets. You offer space below deck. Margot pulls you aside and says, "We just became a fleet. It's true. The ship feels fuller now, louder, warmer, messier, better." In the following days, Tula tells you more. They'd been taken from 3 different islands, a smuggler ship bound for a Portuguese colony. One of the women, Yara, snuck a flint in her hair. When the guards were distracted, she lit the straw in the hull. It caught faster than anyone expected. "We didn't plan to survive," Tula admits, "but once the fire spread, we ran." One quirky detail that makes you laugh until your ribs hurt. Apparently, they tossed the captain overboard mid-blaze, but not before tying coconuts to his boots. "We didn't want him floating back," Yara explains. "Scholars might dismiss this kind of revolt as an outlier, but you've heard enough stories, whispers, ledger footnotes, old logbooks with scratched-out names, to know better. Rebellion isn't rare, it's just rarely recorded. And now your crew has grown, from 2 to 14. Margot teaches them rope work. You drill them on lookout signals. Tula starts organising shifts before you even ask. Within a week, Cell 17 runs smoother than most Royal Navy vessels. They don't call you captain yet, but they will. One evening, Yara paints a symbol on the mainsail, a rising moon over crossed knives. No skulls, no bones, just quiet warning. "Means we survive," she says. You leave it. The scholars will argue about this part too, how you turned a skeleton crew into a sisterhood. Some will claim it's exaggerated, others will write poems, a few will quietly cross-reference missing persons reports and empty gallows records and wonder. Let them. You're sailing east now toward rumours of a shipyard run by deserters, where you can trade in musket balls for maps and maybe hire 1 or 2 more sharp-eyed souls. You stand at the bow, wind in your teeth, and let yourself believe, just for a moment, that you might be unstoppable. And even if you're not, it sure will be fun proving them wrong. The first time they call you captain, it comes from Tula. And it's not during some grand moment. No battle, no storm, just a simple task, tightening a sail line before dusk. Captain, she says, handing you a knot with silent assurance. You pause, rope in hand. You don't correct her. You don't smile either, not right away. The word lingers, heavier than gold. It's not just a title, it's an oath, a confirmation, a challenge. And from that moment on, the others follow. Captain, should we veer west? Captain, there's a crack in the forward beam. Captain, Yara wants to repaint the water barrels. You keep answering and it fits. Margot says nothing about it until nightfall, when she nudges you while sharpening a blade. Took them long enough. Your grin says everything. You dock Cell 17 at a narrow inlet known as Bonehook Bay, a grim name for a place that's surprisingly peaceful. A few shacks, 2 taverns, 1 smithy with a forge that spits orange sparks into the air like it's angry at the stars. This place is what sailors call unclaimed, meaning the Crown ignores it, the Navy avoids it, and the only law comes from who owes who a favour, which works perfectly for you. Your first goal, repairs. The hull needs reinforcement. You need better sails, more rope, more powder, more food, more everything, and perhaps most importantly, people. You spread quiet word through the tavern. Cell 17 is hiring. Not for criminals, not for killers, for the cast-offs, the women with sailor hands and jailhouse scars, the men who fled the Navy and know how to listen more than talk, the ones who don't need your past, just your direction. By week's end, the ship is louder, busier. You gain a cook named Jin who says nothing and makes stew from whatever the ocean offers. You gain a carpenter with tattoos of birds she's never seen in real life. You gain a 13-year-old pickpocket who stows away in a barrel and only admits it 3 days into the next sail, asking, "Do you need a lookout?" Yes, you do. You now number 21. Not a full crew for a brigantine, but enough to be taken seriously. That night, you hold a vote. Not because you need to, but because you want them to choose this life, this mission. You offer them what no navy, no governor, no captain ever did. We aren't raiders, you tell them. Not unless we're forced to be. We take from those who take. We protect those no one else will. We sail free. There's silence. Then slowly, one by one, hands raise. The vote is unanimous. You spend the next few days carving your ship into something that reflects you. The flags change. The paint changes. Even the galley smells different now. Less fear, more garlic and sea salt. The quirky touch. Margot commissions a wooden figurehead to be mounted at the bow. It's not a siren or a warrior or a winged lion. It's a hooded woman, faceless, hands bound in broken chains. No explanation needed. Scholars remain divided would be an understatement for what comes next. Some will insist your ship was just a myth, too disciplined for pirates, too chaotic for mercenaries. Others will note the missing vessels along your route, slave ships mysteriously burned, merchant vessels ransomed but left mostly intact, warships chased off but not sunk. One colonial report describes a strange vessel led by women and ghosts. Another calls it a phantom, no flag, just knives and silence. And you're sailing faster now, stronger, with a crew that hums with purpose. Your raids are strategic, calculated. A Spanish ship carrying prisoners bound for labour camps, you intercept, disarm and release them. A Dutch merchant vessel stacked with stolen sugar and starving crew. You take the sugar, feed the crew, and leave them windbound with their compass disassembled. Just enough delay for your escape. You're not building a reputation. You're building a shadow. They won't know who you are, not exactly, but they'll know what you stand for. And somewhere in every port, whispered in dark corners and under the breath of dockhands, your name starts to spread. Not the name you were born with, not the one the prison wrote down. Just one word, Captain. Rain lashes the deck in sheets so thick they blur the horizon into milk. You shout over the wind, "Reef the sails!" And your crew scrambles with practiced hands, ropes squealing through pulleys, boots pounding the boards like drum beats. Every line you've trained into them holds. Every move snaps into place. This is not chaos. This is command. The storm came out of nowhere. The kind sailors whisper about like old lovers. Sudden, furious and too close for comfort. Cell 17 heaves against the waves, her bones groaning but holding, her rigging stretched tight like a heartbeat. And yet, no one panics, because they trust you. That realization hits harder than the rain. You're no longer the girl chained to a courtroom bench or curled in a laundry basket waiting for mercy. You're the one standing tall at the helm, soaked to the skin, reading the wind like scripture. And your crew watches you. They wait for your word, and they follow. Even Margot, standing beside you, silent and focused, glances your way with that look that says, "Told you so." By dawn, the storm passes, leaving your sails limp and your boots full of seawater. You limp into a hidden cove off a reefed archipelago known on old maps as Widow's Teeth, appropriately named for the number of ships it's claimed. Your navigator, Yara, guides you in using hand signals and memory. You drop anchor in green-blue water so still it reflects your masts like glass. The crew collapses into rest. You don't. You take inventory. One sail torn, 2 barrels of fresh water spoiled. One of the new recruits, Raffi, a mute boy from Trinidad, has a deep cut on his thigh but says nothing. He lets Tula stitch it without flinching. You see it in their eyes, though. Not fear, not defeat, pride. They weathered something that should have sunk them, and they're stronger for it. Over the next few days, you repair and rest. The cove is quiet. No birds, no crabs, just stillness. You and Margot take the longboat to a nearby islet one evening, searching for herbs and driftwood. The place feels untouched, as if no one's breathed on it in years. You find a broken mast embedded in the sand. Faded paint still clings to its wood. La Mariposa, it reads. Spanish, Margot murmurs. She vanished 10 years ago. No survivors. Les Nris. You sit beside the mast and wonder if their captain once sat where you do now. You wonder what she feared most. The storm, the silence, the forgetting. There's a quirky old belief in the Caribbean that when a ship sinks, its soul finds the nearest island and waits for someone to remember it. Sailors used to build driftwood shrines for them, light candles, leave offerings. You and Margot light a fire that night, just in case. Scholars still argue whether these rituals had meaning or were just comfort wrapped in tradition. But you've seen enough now to know not everything can be measured in ledgers and logbooks. Some things are quieter, deeper, like names passed between waves. Back aboard Cell 17, morale shifts. You feel it. A thread woven tighter, jokes sharper, smiles quicker, and something else. Loyalty. The kind you don't buy or command. The kind earned in weather and silence. One morning, Jin, the cook, brings you a shell carved into a rough medallion, no name, just a single hand-drilled hole for string. Thought you might need a pendant, he says. You nod. Wear it. It's small, but it's a crown. That night, anchored beneath a sky thick with stars, you gather the crew on deck. Lanterns flicker, wind rustles the rigging. You look at the faces, hard, tired, scarred and free, and you make it official. We are no one's property, no one's pity, no one's prize. We are storm-born and salt-forged, and we sail for each other. A cheer rises, not loud but deep, from the gut. And from that night forward, Cell 17 isn't just a ship. She's a legend in the making. You sail at dusk, slipping away from Widow's Teeth like a whisper on the tide. The moon is low and the water glows faintly with that eerie phosphorescence sailors claim is either magic or rot. Either way, it's beautiful and silent. Cell 17 glides forward, stronger now, stitched, hammered, patched, and proud. The crew moves like a single body, no need for shouting or second glances. Margot has the helm. You stand beside her, arms crossed, eyes scanning the horizon like you expect something to rise out of it. Maybe you do. Your next stop is riskier, La Vela. It's a busy port, half legitimate, half lawless. A trading post where bribes are currency and maps are rewritten weekly. You've got word of a merchant there, Don Ronaldo, who runs a secret armory from the back of his molasses warehouse. If you want real firepower, you'll need him. But first, You'll need a name. Not your own, of course. Not the name burned in prison ledgers or scrawled in the margins of court scrolls. A captain's name. A false one for now. A name with teeth. Margot votes for Captain Gale. Jin suggests the widow. Tula simply says, call her what they'll remember. In the end, you let the dockhands name you. By the third day in La Vela, the word's out. A tall woman, coat red with brass buttons, crew full of ghosts, sails silent as breath, calls herself the Salt Siren. You didn't choose it, but it sticks. You lean into it. Red coat, quiet presence, sea glass beads braided into your hair. You walk the market with Margot like you own it, and nobody dares ask who you really are. That's the trick. You only have to act like you belong. The truth is, most people won't risk calling your bluff. In Don Ronaldo's warehouse, things shift. He's smug, well-fed, too confident. He tries to haggle. You let Margot do the talking. She negotiates down the price of powder, up the value of respect. You leave with 6 crates, 2 muskets, and 3 smoke grenades that Jin later turns into fireworks, just for morale. The quirky part? One of the crates has a name etched into the bottom, Marie Rose. No one knows who she was. Probably another ship. Probably burned. Probably forgotten. You keep that plank. That night, the crew gathers on deck to unpack the new gear. There's a spark in the air. New weapons mean new possibilities. Bigger ships, bolder raids. The salt hums on the breeze like it knows what's coming. But then, a message. A folded parchment slipped into your bunk, sealed with a wax stamp you don't recognise. Inside it says, "We see your ship. We see your silence. We remember the girl in the chains." No signature. You burn it immediately, but it changes the air around you. Someone knows. Someone from the prison. Someone who remembers what you're trying to bury beneath new sails and false names. You tell no one. Not yet. Instead, you double the anchor watch. You set sail before dawn, skipping the celebration. You put the crew through drills until sweat pours and curses fly, and Tula mutters, "She's planning something." She's not wrong. You're always planning now, because survival isn't enough anymore. You want reach. You want presence. You want power, not for glory, not for gold, but to build something that can't be erased again. And here's the thing historians won't know. You don't want revenge. You want protection. For your crew, for others like you. For every woman who stands barefoot on a dock with a noose waiting and nothing left to trade but her silence. Scholars still debate whether the Salt Siren was a single woman or a composite myth. Some say the name was used by multiple crews to confuse the authorities. Others argue it was one captain, operating under countless disguises. Let them argue. You're not interested in being known. You're interested in sailing long enough that no one can forget. You sail north along the lesser routes, dodging trade winds and patrol paths like a dancer slipping between clumsy partners. The Cell 17 hums beneath you. Not fast, not flashy, but deliberate. The kind of ship that always arrives. The kind that always leaves. Your crew is leaner now in movement, not in number. Every member knows their task. Even the pickpocket boy, Thomas, has become an expert at spotting sails on the horizon before any spyglass can. Margot calls him the Crow, and he grins like he's earned it. But even crows need rest. You anchor at a crescent-shaped island with no name on any map. Locals just call it the Sand Shoulder, a quiet place, flat and sleepy. It smells like papaya, wet rope, and forgotten things. You dock at dusk. The villagers glance up but say nothing. They've seen ships come and go. Yours doesn't scare them, yet. Your reason for stopping isn't supplies. It's burial, not of a body but of a past. That plank from the crate back in La Vela, Marie Rose, has become a symbol to you. You sanded it, carved into it. The words are simple. She was not forgotten. You and Margot take it to the edge of a cliff above the tide and dig a shallow hole. No ceremony, no prayers, just silence, and the creak of the sea below. Then you cover it, press your hand to the mound, and walk away. Later, in a quiet tavern built from shipwreck planks and coral rock, a weathered man leans over his ale and says something that changes your path. "You looking for Heron Cay?" You don't answer. He takes that as a yes. "Saw it once, middle of nowhere. Clouds don't even want to pass over it. Some say a ship disappeared there last year. Before that, 10 years clean." You sip your drink. He lowers his voice. "Rumour says there's a prison there. Not official, not listed, just a fortress, and it only holds women." The room doesn't react. but Margot's hand stills over her mug. The man continues. They say the ones inside don't get trials. They just vanish. Your pulse doesn't spike, not outwardly, but inside something ancient and electric rises. You've heard whispers of places like that, where the crown sends inconvenient bodies, where women who know too much or fought too well are tucked away like mouldy books, never destroyed, just hidden. And now you have a direction, not for plunder, not for gold, for liberation. You leave the tavern without a word. Back on the ship you gather the crew under lantern light. You tell them what you heard, you tell them the plan. We're not raiding Heron Cay for loot, you say. We're going to see if the ghosts are real, and if they are. You let the sentence hang. They nod, some slow, some fast. Jin whistles low. We'll need fire. Margot starts listing supplies aloud. Tula grins with all her teeth. And in that moment, Cell 17 becomes something else again. Not a ghost ship, not a rumour, but a reckoning. The quirky detail that slips in next. Thomas, the crow-eyed boy, raises his hand and says, If it's a fortress, we'll need someone small. You raise an eyebrow. I'll fit between the bars, he says. Everyone laughs, but they also don't forget. Scholars today still question the existence of Heron Cay. It never appeared on Crown maps, and no prison logbook records it. But a single naval dispatch from a rear admiral in 1726 mentions a structure at 14 Cullen North, inaccessible by any proper chart and unsuitable for diplomatic attention. That same dispatch ends with a redacted paragraph and a note. Request for reassignment. You plot a course that night. No sails up yet, just stars and silence. But the next storm will come, and this time you'll be the one bringing it. The route to Heron Cay is like navigating a bruise, dark, swollen with reefs, and tender in places you don't touch without care. The closer you sail, the more the sea changes. It loses colour for one. Blues shift to green, then to something between slate and ink. Even the wind feels muffled, like it's holding its breath. You're not on any map now. You're moving in story space, off the edges of parchment where monsters were once drawn in curled ink. The crew knows it too. No singing, no card games, only the sound of sails pulling taut and the occasional muttered prayer. On the third night, fog creeps in, unnatural, thick as wool, clinging to skin and rope. It doesn't feel like weather, it feels like warning. You order silence. Thomas climbs to the crow's nest without a word, spyglass clenched like a relic. Margot stands at your side, hand never far from the hilt of her blade. Jin prepares the kitchen like it's battle, sharpening every tool. At dawn the island emerges, Heron Cay, not welcoming, not wild, just still. It's small, flat-topped, ringed with jagged rock and mangrove claws, and right in the centre, a stone structure like a broken tooth. No flags, no guards, no obvious docks, just presence. The kind of place that doesn't need to be defended because no one is meant to know it exists. And yet, it exists. You circle wide, anchoring behind a jut of coral that shields your hull from view. Then comes the planning. The only path inside is through the rocks. You'll row, you'll sneak, and if you're caught, you'll improvise. You're good at that, Margot says with a sideways smirk. She's right. You take a crew of 6. Tula, Margot, Thomas, Inez, your quiet lookout, Yara, who's fluent in fear but never shows it, and yourself. You row in under cloud cover, oars silent, water black. As you approach, you see it. A back entrance, partially crumbled, not meant for ships, meant for runoff maybe, or escape. Too perfect. You slip inside. The corridor is damp stone and old salt. Smells like rust and resignation. Torch brackets line the walls, but no fire burns. You move by feel, fingers against the damp. Inside, it's worse. Cells. Iron bars and wooden doors. Some open, some not. No signs of recent struggle. No signs of a life at all, until you hear it. A cough. You stop. Everyone does. You follow it, left, then down. Then into a chamber lined with 6 cells. In the last one a woman, barefoot. Hollow-eyed, wrapped in cloth so old it looks like it grew there. She blinks at you like you're a memory. Name? You whisper. She says nothing. Yara steps forward. She's not the only one, she says. You check the other cells. 4 women, 2 alive, 1 unconscious, 1 long past saving. No guards, no staff, just the silence of long neglect. Tula finds a logbook on a shelf covered in mildew and cracked leather. She opens it. Most entries are blank. A few pages list only gender, age, and a single word: confined. The last entry is dated 8 years ago. This place was abandoned, quietly, but the prisoners weren't. Here comes the quirky part. On the inside of one cell wall, someone carved a message. Tiny, deliberate. If no one comes, then we will become our own ghosts. You take a breath. Say, no one's becoming a ghost today. You break the locks. You carry the weakest on your backs. You retrace the damp corridor, slipping out into the fog just as it begins to break. No gunfire, no alarm, no resistance. Like the island itself is letting them go. Back aboard Cell 17, the crew makes room. Blankets, water, bread. No one speaks until the woman from the last cell looks up at you and whispers, "Did you come back for us?" You don't know what she means. Not until Margot shows you a name scratched into the back of the prison logbook's final page. Anne B. You don't speak. You just hold it. Some say Anne Bonny was hanged. Others say she vanished. Some claim she lived out her life under a new name. But if she built this place, if she hid prisoners here as a final defiant act, then everything changes. Scholars remain baffled by Heron Cay. No empire ever claimed it. No ship ever charted it. But in whispered accounts from freed prisoners and secret testimonies decades later, a phrase repeats, "We were remembered." And now you sail away with that weight, that honour, and perhaps her legacy. You leave Heron Cay behind just as the sky begins to forget it exists. The fog doesn't follow. The sea feels lighter now, as if it exhaled with the rest of you. On deck, the rescued women sit in blankets, drinking warm broth and watching the sails above them like they're learning how the world works again. Some are silent. Some ask questions. One keeps humming a tune you don't recognise but feel like you've always known. You keep the logbook in your quarters. The name Anne B is a ghost in the ink. No full name, no title. Just a whisper of resistance that survived longer than anyone expected. Margot doesn't say much about it, but she's been quieter since the rescue. She walks the deck at night, fingering her knife hilt like she's waiting for something to go wrong again. You don't press her. You're all adjusting. It's not easy going from hunted to haunted to something like hopeful. You sail west towards safe waters, relatively speaking, a tiny inlet off the coast of Belize, a place known only as Thornhook, where the palms grow sideways and the wind whistles like it's gossiping. You've heard there's a healer there, the kind who doesn't ask questions. One of the rescued women, her name is Zama, hasn't spoken since you found her. You want her looked at. You want them all looked at. But first, Thornhook makes you prove yourself. You sail into the bay at high tide, sails slack, trying not to look like a threat. Still, 3 boats row out to meet you, loaded with armed women and one old man with a harpoon longer than his canoe. They circle, they shout, they demand names. You say yours, not your old one, not the prison's, the new one. Captain of Cell 17, we brought women who are forgotten. That's all it takes. The boats back off. Thornhook isn't a village. It's more like a refuge woven into the jungle. Huts built from shipwrecks, nets strung between trees, children playing with bones shaped into whistles. And everywhere you look, people who've vanished from the official record. Runaways, escaped slaves, former conscripts, deserting soldiers. A woman who swears she once cursed a bishop and lived. And now, you. The quirky part? The healer turns out to be a blind woman named Kinta, who reads pulses by fingertip and diagnoses fevers by taste. She clicks her tongue at every injury like it personally inconveniences her, but she's effective. After 2 days, Zama speaks. Only one word. Free. It hits harder than any broadside. The crew rests here, mending gear, tending wounds, trading stories. Some of the women you rescued asked to stay. Thornhook offers something Cell 17 can't. Stillness. You let them choose. That was always the point. One chooses to go. Her name is Sarah. She's small, fast, and already showing Tomas how to rig knots he didn't know existed. She wants to sail, Margot says, smiling for the first time in days. You nod. Good. In the evenings, you and Margot sit on the beach, toes in the tide. You speak of Anne Bonny now, not in legend, but in possibility. Did she found Heron Cay? Did she escape? Did she sail again under another name? Or did someone else carry her story forward, adding her name to a logbook as tribute? Experts still debate it. Some claim Anne died in obscurity. Others think she escaped justice entirely. A few argue she never existed at all. But you've held that logbook. You've seen the carved words in stone. You've heard the rescued women whisper Bonnie like it's both name and blessing. You know better. And now you wonder what name you will leave behind, not for glory, for memory. That night, you stand before your crew. Lantern light flickers. Palms sway like listening ears. I want to build something, you say. Not just a ship, not just a crew, a chain of refuge. One safe port for every place they lock the doors. A signal passed from sail to sail. They listen, they nod. Tula steps forward. And what do we call it? You hesitate, then say, the Silent Fleet. No flags, no empire, no parades. Just ships that remember. You leave Thornhook at dawn, the tide rising like it's lifting your resolve. The jungle fades behind you, quiet and green, as Cell 17 turns back to the open sea with new sails, new crew, and a name that now means something beyond escape. The Silent Fleet isn't real yet. Not fully. It's still just an idea, a whisper on the wind. But it begins here, with you, with this ship, with one rescued woman teaching another how to tie a sail, with Thomas mapping stars by memory, with Margot sketching ship outlines into her knife handle. You sail with purpose now, not just looking for plunder or trouble, but for signals, for signs of the others, because surely you think you're not the only one, not the only captain who's built something from scraps and silence, not the only ship to rescue rather than pillage. The world is too wide for you to be the first. Your course bends northeast, toward rumours. You heard it in Thornhook, whispered between sips of fish soup and the hiss of wet boots by the fire. A galley flagged as Spanish, crewed by women, last seen sailing into the Devil's Throat current near Dominica, and not coming back. No wreck, no wreckage, just gone. But if they weren't wrecked, then maybe they're waiting, maybe they're watching. You want to find them, but first you need to signal them, so you invent your own. At dusk you climb the mainmast with Tula and two of the newer women, Sarah and Asha, and you raise a new flag, black canvas, a silver crescent moon crossed by two white feathers. No skulls, no swords, just defiance, just identity. Why feathers? Tula asks. Because they float, you say, and they carry words on the wind. Your first test comes faster than expected. 3 days out from Thornhook, you spot a schooner on the horizon. Fast, elegant, white sails trimmed in blue. Too clean to be a trader, too subtle to be navy. Margot checks the spyglass. No flag. That's answer enough. You change course to intersect. Not hostile, just curious. The ship doesn't run. It matches your speed, mirrors your moves, a dance between strangers. By twilight you're within shouting distance. Both ships slow, drift closer, silent as breath. Then a voice cuts through the air, deep and smooth. What's your business? You call back, memory. A pause, then, show us. You raise the new flag. They raise something too, a length of crimson cloth tied with knots, each knot different. Some say it's an old smuggler's code. Some say it's a map in thread form. Either way, it means one thing, acknowledgement. You don't board each other, you don't trade names, but you sail beside them for an hour, quietly, as if to say, we see you, we're still here. Then they vanish into the night. It's not much, it's everything. The quirky moment comes just before midnight. Thomas taps your shoulder and points west. A lantern, flickering. Too far for any ship. Suspended mid-air from a cliffside or high post. He draws it for you. 3 short flashes. A pause, then 2 long ones. You write it down. Another code, another link in a chain that's only just begun to form. Scholars still argue whether the so-called Silent Fleet ever truly existed. No official record shows more than 2 of these ships sailing together. No flags were captured, no treaties were signed. But ports across the Caribbean report unexplained raids on slavers, merchant ships with missing cargo but untouched crews, and villages that grew stronger after ghost ships passed through. No evidence, just patterns, and now you're part of the pattern. You turn Cell 17 east. More names wait to be found. More fires wait to be lit. The Caribbean opens before you like a page half burned and still smouldering. You steer Cell 17 into deeper waters, chasing rumours like breadcrumbs, stories of ships that vanish but never sink, of coastal towns that glow with lantern signals at night, of coded carvings found on mangrove roots and under dock planks. The fleet is out there. It has to be. But first you make stops. Quiet ones. Places no empire pays attention to. The edge places, the forgotten coves. In one of them, a village called Cayo de Nieve, you find her. Her name is Mara. She's tall, silver-haired, and moves like someone who once ran a crew and still dreams about storms. She's mending fishing nets when you meet her, hands calloused, eyes sharp. "Captain," she says before you even introduce yourself. "Took you long enough?" Margot raises an eyebrow. You don't ask how she knows. You just sit down and listen. Mara tells you stories of a ship called Brisa Muerta, crewed entirely by women who had once been prisoners, of its final voyage, pursued by 3 warships and never seen again. But she insists it wasn't sunk. She insists it transformed. They left their names behind, she says, became shadows with sails. You ask if they were part of the Silent Fleet. She chuckles. "Child, the Silent Fleet isn't new. You're just the latest to carry the fire." She gives you a carved token before you go, a wooden medallion with a wave spiralling inward. Hang it by the rudder. If another ship sees it, they'll know you're not the enemy. You do exactly that, and 2 weeks later, it works. In the dead of night, a sloop approaches. No lanterns, no sounds, just a low whistle from across the water. You whistle back, twice short, one long, your agreed call. Then you hold up the token swinging from a rope. The sloop drifts closer, and a voice calls out, "What's your signal colour?" Margot answers, "Silver on black." "Good," the voice replies. "Then we won't shoot you." They pass without contact. Just another silent recognition. That same week, you intercept a slave transport under Portuguese colours. You don't ask questions. You just act. Your crew boards it at dawn. Tula and Sarah disable the rudder while Margot takes the helm. You find the prisoners chained below deck, 12 women, 2 boys. You smash the locks yourself. You carry one of them, too weak to walk, up the stairs. You don't leave the slavers adrift. You scuttle the ship, because some vessels don't deserve to be remembered. One of the freed women, a quiet girl named Luma, asks to stay aboard. She's never seen the sea from above the hull, never touched a sail, but the moment you give her a line to tie, she does it faster than most of your crew. "Feels like breathing," she says. Scholars would later say the Silent Fleet didn't engage in slavery raids, that it was just pirate romance and sailors' exaggeration. They point to a lack of formal reports. But what records would there be? What governor would admit his enemies were rescuing better than his own navy? What admiral would confess to losing ships to ghost women with knives and no flag? Back on deck, Thomas asks if you think the fleet will ever truly gather. Multiple ships sailing under the same cause, same night sky, same code. You don't answer right away. Instead, you pull out a map you've been marking, not with ports or towns, but with symbols, lantern codes, confirmed sightings, ships that passed quietly and answered your signal. 7 marks, 7 others. You tap the edge of the map and say, "We're already gathering, we just don't need to be loud about it." That night, Margot pins a silver feather to the mast, a real one, taken from a gull that landed on your deck like it had business there. She doesn't explain, you don't ask, but everyone sees it, and they know what it means. The signal's changing, not louder, just brighter, just enough to guide the next ship in. You sail north into darker waters, not literally, but in tone. The sky is still blue, the wind still kind, but the air carries whispers now, heavier whispers. The name Salt Siren is spreading faster than you expected. In St. Vincent, you hear it muttered by dockhands who swear they saw your ship outrun a British cutter. In Cartagena, someone has drawn your flag in chalk beneath a tavern table. In a slave market you pass without stopping. A merchant flinches at the sight of your black sails, then pretends he didn't, and in Port Royal someone puts a bounty on your head. You don't learn that from a messenger. You learn it from a woman with a dagger scar running across her chin who boards cell 17 in disguise, and then, halfway through dinner, calmly tells you, "Your price is 500 crowns. Higher if they can take you alive." You ask her what she wants in return for that information. "Just a place," she says. "Somewhere I don't have to watch my back. Somewhere that flies your flag." So you let her stay. Her name is Vera, and she's a better navigator than anyone else on your ship, including you. She talks to stars like they're friends. She draws maps from memory. And she dreams of building a school on an island no one owns. You promise to find her one. That's how Cell 17 grows. Not by conquest, but by need, by story, by shared breath and bruised trust. But the pressure is building. The bounty means attention, and attention means traps. One finds you just off the coast of Hispaniola. A merchant ship waving a distress flag. White sails, listing, smoke rising. Classic bait. You approach cautiously. No one's visible on deck. You're about to call off the inspection when Margot spots it. The waterline is wrong. Too high. The hold is empty. A decoy. You swing Cell 17 hard to port just as cannon fire erupts from behind the smoke. A British brig, waiting, silent, hungry. But they've made one critical mistake. They think they're chasing a pirate. You're not. You're a fleet. You don't fight alone. Before the cannonballs can reload, a second ship appears from behind the cliffs. Sleek, painted storm grey, no flags. Then a third from the north, sails dyed deep red, her crew masked with scarves and feathers. You recognise them. One was the sloop from that silent pass weeks ago. The other, unknown but signalling the code. Two short, one long. You answer. Silver on black. They flank the brig. You don't even have to command. It's ballet. Bullets, hooks, sails whipping like cloaks in wind. 15 minutes later, the brig surrenders. You board it yourself. The captain, young, red-faced, shaking, stares at you like you're a story he's only half believed in. You ask him one question. Who told you we were coming? He gives you a name. You thank him, and you leave the ship intact. But you strip it of gunpowder, maps, and pride. And then you vanish, all three of you, before the sun finishes rising. The fleet is real now, not just because you fought together, but because you moved together. Trusted, responded, protected. The sea is whispering your name in waves, and the empires are finally listening for all the wrong reasons. The quirky part? That night Jin holds a tiny ceremony for the crew, a tradition from his fishing village. He boils sugar and vinegar, sets it in a cracked bowl, and lights a match. It hisses, smokes, and then cools into a shell of hardened caramel. Means we're sealed, he says. No breaking. Not now. You eat it. So does everyone else. Even Tomas, who pretends he doesn't like sweets. Scholars will later debate whether this was the first official act of the Silent Fleet. Some will claim the others were mercenaries or flukes. But this was unity. Intentional. Coordinated. And that changes the shape of your future. You chart a new course that night, northeast toward a place Vera insists is real. An island with cliffs like teeth, where the wind smells of citrus and no flags fly overhead. A place to build something, not just a base, a beginning. You sail to the island with no name. Vera guides you in. The cliffs rise steep and defiant, carved by centuries of wind and rumour. The trees are thick with green, so deep it looks black in the rain, and the beaches curve like half-drawn swords. You dock on the southern shore where the rocks form a natural harbour, and no lanterns burn because no one lives here. Not yet, but they will. The crew rows ashore in silence. Everyone knows this is different. This is not a raid or a rescue or a ghost chase. This is a planting. You explore first. Small groups, armed but casual. No traps, no old bones. Just quiet land and tall grass and streams that trickle like secrets. You find flat ground for building. You find fruit trees and fish-filled pools. You find space. You camp that night in a crescent clearing, hammocks strung between trees, a fire crackling low. Margot passes a flask. Thomas carves feathers into driftwood. Tula hums a tune that has no words, and no need for them. And in the morning, you begin. It's not glamorous. It's digging and cutting and hauling. You build shelter with broken hands and blistered feet. Jin makes stew from things no one can pronounce. Yara starts drawing plans in charcoal, and little by little, what was empty becomes claimed, not by paper or empire, but by presence. They name the place Aquila, Latin for eagle, Vera's idea. It's how we'll fly between ships, she says, between ports, a home nest. It fits. Over the next 2 weeks, more ships arrive, 3 in all. You know none of them by name, but everyone raises a version of your signal. Feathers, moons, black on silver flags sewn by calloused hands, and one brings a message. Written in charcoal on parchment, no sender. More are coming. Hold fast. We're ready. Scholars will later call Aquila a myth. No naval records, no official cartography, just hearsay, scribbled mentions in sailors' journals, and one half-burned map found in a British officer's pocket. But the pattern was real. Fewer slave ships passed through the Central Belt that year. More merchant crews reported being spared during mystery boardings, and in every port town stories bloomed of women captains, silent ships, and shadows that moved like justice. You become less a name, more a symbol, and Cell 17 sails less often, but more purposefully. Your crew grows, then tightens. Some stay ashore, some build, some ferry messages quietly between islands. You teach others what it means to disappear loudly, to resist without spectacle, to live without chains, to leave behind something heavier than gold. One morning, as gulls scream above the reef, Margot leans on the bow beside you. "We did it," she says. You nod, but add, "We started it." Because legends are long games, and silence, if played right, echoes. You leave the harbour that day with your sails trimmed clean, and a mission sealed in salt and wood. A fleet without flags, a movement without borders, a memory that refuses to drown. The sea quiets now. The sails ease. The waves grow slow and soft, rocking the ship like a cradle instead of a battlefield. Lantern light sways above the deck, golden and gentle, casting long shadows on the wood. The crew is asleep, or close to it, tucked into hammocks, curled under canvas, their breath rising and falling with the tide. You stand at the bow one last time tonight, the wind brushing your face like an old friend. The stars above are sharp and countless. Somewhere behind you, Aquila sleeps too, its fires still warm in the earth, its stories taking root. You think of all the women whose names were never written down, the ones who vanished into shackles, into sea foam, into silence. You think of Anne Bonny's final entry, scratched in fading ink, of Francesca's knowing smile, of the girl in the cell who asked, "Did you come back for us?" You did. And maybe, someday, someone will come for you. But not yet. You've carved a life out of salt and refusal. You've become more than legend. You've become safe harbour. Not for everyone, just for those the world would rather forget. And now it's time to rest. Let the water rock you. Let the wind hush you. Let the dark take your edges and soften them into dream. No shackles tonight. No courtrooms. No nooses. Just the low, steady creak of timber and the pulse of the sea. Your ship sails still. But for now, it drifts, and so do you. Sleep, Captain. The tide watches over you. End of script. Sweet dreams.